Hi guys, my Verticator back again. Welcome back to another Patreon request. Patreon, to everybody who joins the Patreon, thank you. I appreciate it as always. Um, this is another request from one of my beta level tier members, Tim Dragon. And Tim, out of his four requests, I've done no, this is new. These are new. These are new ones. Sorry. So out of the four he requested this time, I thought I'd start with the most easiest one, um, and that is what was my issue with DC versus Marvel. Basically, he's asking me what was my issue with this. Oh, can't see it. Sorry. That's what he wants to know. What was my issue with that book? Um, as you probably know, and if you don't know, guys, they're bringing out new printings, an omnibus of DC versus Marvel. I believe comes out in August. I saw it on George Perez's site, and it's gonna cost a hefty amount. It's 1,000 pages. It's gonna have all the, not just the story, that the four-part story, but I think everything from even the crossover, from even the Silver Surfer Superman crossover, which I never read. I always wanted to read that. Um, but let's get into it in general. What was my problem with it? Where do I start? How about that? Where do we start? When this when that miniseries came out, Marvel Marvel had done um they had done crossovers before, Marvel and DC. Marvel and DC are two of the biggest companies, comic companies in the States. And this came out in 1996, I believe. And I remember seeing, them try to advertise this and vote now, vote, do the votes, vote, vote, vote. And that was one of the problems right there, voting. This was a story, but it was written by two greats, Ron Martz and Peter David. And I believe Dan Jurgens was also a writer. But the fact of the matter is, I'm like, you're voting now in these fights that pitted Marvel against DC. They had Superman versus Hulk, Submariner Namor versus Aquaman, Batman versus Captain America, Flash versus Quicksilver, Robin versus Jubilee. I didn't get that. Thor versus Captain Marvel, Spider-Man versus Superboy. And but with those, that was also really weird. The only reason why they did it was because they were clones. This was not Peter Parker. This was Ben Riley. Um, they also did Storm versus Wonder Woman, Green Lantern versus Silver Surfer. Out of a lot of the fights here, and of course, then there was Lobo versus Wolverine, which was a clear mismatch in general. But why? Why was that? Because they were the two badass anti-heroes in a sense at that time, and we put them together. But it was a mismatch in general. The story was just kind of weird in general, but the fights just it was all about voting. That was the major key to this. It was all about voting. You vote, you check the box on who, and then that issue would come out with that fight. It just was stupid. It was an insult to a lot of those characters, those great characters. It really was. I mean, and let's just go down a few of them. So prior to the fights, there were some things that made me laugh in the that made me laugh that I actually found funny. One of them being Batman and Wolverine and Gambit actually stealing the Batmobile. I thought that was funny. I still laugh at that today. I still laugh at it when I found it funny. And then anybody who thinks that's like, oh, that would never happen, dudes. Jason Todd stole the hubcaps from the Batmobile. You don't think Wolverine could shink and get inside it? Come on. That's all I'm saying. But in general, those are some of the funny things I liked about it. Um, I found it really weird. Ben Riley, Peter, is hitting on Lois when and knowing that she's with Clark. It was just weird. It was dumb. Um, and this was just things because the worlds had merged together in general. But outside of that, the fights, they were just it was just nothing. You had Jubilee and that was Tim Drake, Robin fighting. They had nothing in common outside of just being the young teens. Tim didn't hit her. He never hit her. He did the old, cape cowl trick and wrapped her up, and that was about it. But it was stupid. And that should have never happened. That fight should have never been there. Another one was Flash and Quicksilver, and if you thought Quicksilver was a dick in general, yeah, this fight made him look like an uber dick. So they're Flash and Quicksilver fighting, and yes, Quicksilver is considered the go-to speedster in Marvel. Even though there are other speedster in Marvels, but he's like, I guess you can say, the most recognizable. And to me, the way he acted in this, it felt like he was still part of the Brotherhood. He acted like a villain. And there was a scene where there were kids trapped in a tanker or a truck, and Flash went to go save them. He has these kids in his hands, mind you. And here comes Pietro being a dick, punching this man while he has these kids. And I'm like, and people were supposed to, and he's a hero? Are you? It made him look like a villain. It was dumb. It was stupid. It was dumb. It made no sense. Everybody knows. And then even more, it was like everybody knows Flash is faster than Quicksilver. It was stupid. It was just dumb. Another one that I just found stupid and an insult to each character was Namor versus Aquaman. Now, most people who don't know these characters, they would instantly say, "Oh, Marvel copied a DC." No, it didn't. This is wrong. Marvel copied DC. DC copied Marvel. Namor came out in the 30s. Aquaman came out in the 50s. And a lot of people don't understand this, but everything Aquaman can do, Namor can do it too. He just doesn't advertise it, but he can. He could do it too. And in this fight, it clearly showed that they made it seem as like they were equal because they were in the water. So they get out the water and still, and that's where it proved and looked like it was going to be a stalemate. And so what happens? What happens? Let me tell you what happens. I'll tell you what happens. Aquaman, Arthur, King of Atlantis, one King of Atlantis, decides to summon an orca to land on Namor. And it's like he even says, "You're good, Namor, but you're not willing to cheat." Insult to that character. And Namor gets splat by a whale. Huh? Okay. I'm supposed to buy into that. I'm supposed to buy that Namor wouldn't have picked that orca right back up and probably chucked it right back at at Arthur. There's no freaking way that would have happened. That was an insult to both of those characters. You had you had I'm not going in order, but you had you had Storm you had no, I'll do this one. You had Thor versus Captain Marvel. A god the versus Earth's mightiest mortal, basically Captain Marvel, Billy Batson. I'm not calling him by the S name. And when they fight, it was basically they prayed first, and then they got into battle. In the fight, um, Billy was outmatched. He was outclassed. He basically they wrote it as if Thor's experience was too much for Billy. Even though Billy has the wisdom of Solomon, it didn't show there. An insult to that character to a degree. And Billy tried to call, he said Shazam, he tried to call in the lightning. Thor blocked it with Mjolnir, but then they clashed into each other and they went flying. But then all of a sudden, Thor saw He saw Billy run away, and that was it. So basically, if we were doing this as a wrestling match, they protected Billy, not make him look inferior to Thor. And this was at a time when Thor was wearing probably the most ugliest Thor costume. I hate that look. 90s look for Thor was ugly. I hate that look. He looked like he belonged in some kind of European rock band. It just looked weird. It really did. But yeah, and not only that, he loses Mjolnir. He loses it. I don't know how he didn't just call it back, just summon it back to him, but he does. And who picks it up? Storm. I mean, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman picks up Thor's hammer, basically showing that she's pure enough and has the she's worthy enough to pick up Mjolnir, and she gains the power of Thor. Not only does she have her Amazonian abilities, but now she has the power of Thor. And her and Storm fight. And what does Diana do? She does the honorable thing. She puts down the storm, puts down Mjolnir and fights Storm, quote unquote, fairly. And in the end, she loses. How? Simple. Thor, one Di- Aurora Storm literally just says, "I'm sorry, sister," and summons a lightning bolt, and she's died. She's down. I have seen Diana take worse than a bolt of lightning. Mind you, she is blocking it and still gets shocked. I've seen worse. Now, this was at a time when I don't necessarily think that they were classifying Storm as with like they're classifying her as an Omega level mutant at the time, but no. The point about it is it was still just it was voting because at the time this was the 90s. Storm was very popular. Wonder Woman was not so popular in the 90s. Not that I could recall, and I lived through that. And so yeah, it was just weird. So it was kind of an insult to that character. Um, you had Spider-Man versus Superboy. Now this was just dumb in general because it was the clones versus the clones. Again, this is just something I looked at just dumb. It was stupid. Spider-Man win because he shot impact weapon at Superboy. He goes into this generator, gets shocked. Boom, that's it. It was dumb. Wolverine versus Lobo. What an insult to Lobo and just in general. You can kind of say, well, they protected Lobo. No, they didn't. It was an insult. It was a complete insult. There's no way in given that Wolverine should be beating Lobo in a fight. None whatsoever. Healing factor or not, Lobo can't die. He is immortal. He can't die. Wolverine can be killed. Wolverine is not immortal. Yes, his healing factor is godlike, but at this point in time, his healing factor was not at that god level that it is now. But yeah, they go behind a bar, they're fighting behind a bar, and then you see Wolverine come up, and Lobo's not nowhere to be seen. What an insult. What an insult. And I'm reading this, and I'm at the time, I'm reading this, and I'm like, and at that time, I'm still like, who really, Mr. David? Really, Mr. Marks? That's what you think? Really? The Hulk and Superman was insult. Yes, people will say, well, that was Smart Hulk. That was Professor Hulk. It doesn't matter. It's Bruce Banner with the Hulk still his strength. And in this fight, we're seeing Bruce take everything from Superman. His heat, a full on blast from heat vision, didn't even singe the man. A punch, this, that, everything. And all of a sudden, one punch knocks Bruce off the Grand Canyon and he doesn't get back up. Give me a break. Again, the writing in this was just weird. And yes, it was voting. And that's the major problem, the voting aspect. The only fight that really made sense to me and I could clearly see that's how it would go in general is the Silver Surfer versus Green Lantern. You had Silver Surfer, Norrin Rad, one of my favorite Marvel characters, versus my favorite Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner. As much as I love Kyle, it is no God-giving way Kyle could beat Norrin. Norrin, Silver Surfer could take out several Green Lanterns by himself. He would just have to think of go. You get out of here. There's no way a Green Lantern, even with their will, could beat Power Cosmic. Stop playing. That was fair. I actually enjoyed. I'm like that. Yeah, that way it would go. But even when all the other fights they showed, there was some. They had Iron Man versus Steel, Supergirl versus She Hulk. I believe it was Hawkeye versus Green Arrow. But to me, it looked like he was facing Connor Hawk, his son. You know, um, there was a little bit of a Gambit and Nightwing going at it at one point. There was I don't know who when you see it, you look at they had Green Goblin and Joker, and it was just weirdness. It just really was. And then there was stuff that not all of them were fighting, but there was one fight I actually would have loved to see: the Punisher versus Slade. I was like I would have loved to seen that. But as the end of be all of this is yes, the main reason why it was voting. Those are my major issues with DC versus Marvel, the voting aspect, because they knew that the characters they matched up together, odds are they were going to go for the more popular character. Nobody cared about Superboy at that time. That was when Superboy was very cocky. So you put him in Spider-Man, are you crazy? They were going to pick Spider-Man over him any day. Same thing with Wolverine. This is 90s. Wolverine was on fire in the 90s. You think that Wolverine Storm versus uh, Wonder Woman, X-Men were in general hot during the 90s. They're going over on any character. Doesn't matter. But yes, some of them just it was these some of these fights were just insulting. Like I said, it was insult to characters. And that's the main just the reason why I don't really like this too much is because is because of the voting. Now you may say, but Kristen, why do you own it? I'm a collector. In general, I'm a collector, and I started it, and I was like, I can't find. When I started reading it, I was reading from issue number 2. I didn't get to read issue number 1. So, and I couldn't find issue because it got sold out. So when it came in trade, I bought it. And at that time, this was only 13 bucks. So yeah, the it's all comes down to votes. This this was written by two greats, and it just irritates me. Now, I remember someone asking me a couple of years ago, like, would you have done anything different? Absolutely, I would have did something different. The whole I'm not a big I don't get a hard on like some other comic readers about seeing heroes fight each other. I don't like it. I really don't. And even when you put this together, it shouldn't have been came down to they should have instantly said something's wrong. Let's see what we can do. Let's not fight. Let's try to figure it out. But they didn't. That's why I do it. And the Batman versus Captain America, that was a clear insult to me. That was an insult just the way they wrap that up. You want to see a good Captain America Batman fight? Go read JLA Avengers. That's where it was done respectfully. Because at the end of the day, even Batman himself, they didn't even they didn't physically fight. They were mentally fighting each other. Basically, Batman, they were just staring at each other mentally. And Batman said it himself. All right, Avenger, you win. It's clearly that you could beat me. It wouldn't be easy, but you would win. I'm done. There you go. Look, um, again, I don't mean to come down on the DC versus Marvel miniseries, but at the end of the day, it was just a cash grab. It was to make money, and to me, it didn't do nothing for us fans in general because us fans want to see the two work together more and do good things together. But at the end of the day, there's too many people in both respected companies that there's a dick measuring contest between them, and two of them have left both companies respectfully, but the essence of that is still there, and it sucks because I would love to see some Marvel and DC crossovers that we've never gotten to see. I wish we would have gotten another Daredevil Batman. And I remember they wanted to do another Daredevil Batman. And you know what Joe Quesada and Dan Didio said? Excuse me. No, I wish we could have gotten a Teen Titans Young Avengers crossover. I wish we could have seen Mr. Terrific work with the Fantastic Four or something, or the JLA, the JSA work with the Invaders or something like that. I wish we could have seen that, but we don't, because still the essence of the dick measuring contest is there. Well, guys, that's it. Um, Tim, I hope you got your answer. I hope you enjoyed my answer. At the end of the day, DC versus Marvel, that crossover, it's not my favorite. I don't really care for it as much, but there were some good crossovers outside of that. And I did like the amalgam universe. I did like that. But again, it was a cash grab. And to me, it didn't work. Guys, I'll see you guys next time with some more Patreon requests. I got a lot more from you guys, and I keep getting more every day, and I appreciate that. I'm trying to get through as many as I can, but yeah, it is what it is. You guys take care. I'll see you guys next time. Deuces.